Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for those who are attending today's webinar. Today, we will be talking about mastering US college finances and navigating cost, financial aid, and the CSS profile. However, before we get into today's webinar, let me introduce you to myself and to Education USA. So my name is Iman Amir. I'm an Education USA advisor here at the Karachi office. I am a recent graduate from the University of Massachusetts Amherst with a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and a minor in English. So for those of you who do not know what Education USA is, so Education USA is part of the US Department of State network. We have over 400 advising centers within 170 different countries and territories across the world. We provide free advising services to Pakistani students who are looking to apply to the US for their bachelor's, master's, or PhD. So do register for our free advising services. We also have an app now. So on the screen, you can scan the QR code and download our app. And it works like WhatsApp. You can message your assigned Education USA advisors from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. On the screen right now, you'll see our email and our website link as well. So you can go here or email us and register for free advising services. So I know from personal experience that the US application process can be a bit daunting. However, Education USA has broken down this application process into 5 simple steps. Step number 1 being researching your options. Step number 2 being financing your studies, which we're going to talk in detail today. Step number 3 being completing your application. Step number 4 being applying for your visa. And step number 5, preparing for your departure. So no matter where you are throughout this where you are on any one of these steps, we will help you each and every step of the way. So starting off with the webinar, so right now you are looking at the average cost of US higher education. And the 2 different institutions that we will be talking about today is the public and private institutions. So on average, this is an estimate on the screen right now. A 4-year public institution is approximately $30,000 per year. Again, this is an estimate. It can be more or less. And then a 4-year private institution is close to $40,000 per year. Again, it can go up to $80,000 as well, or it can go lower, depending on the school and location that you're applying to. Public universities tend to be more affordable options for some students. However, for some international students, it might not. But because public universities are already comparatively cheaper to private universities, they are not as generous with financial aid and scholarships. However, 4-year private institutions are more generous towards international students when it comes to financial aid packages and scholarships. So the total cost of attendance that we're going to be looking at is not just your tuition fees. Yes, your tuition fees comprises of educational instruction, facilities, lab equipment, and libraries. However, you should also keep in mind that living costs does take up a big chunk of your money. Living costs include your room and board costs. For as freshmen going into college, a lot of universities make it compulsory for freshmen to live on campus. So even if you want to maybe live off campus later on, within freshman year, you will have to live on campus, and living on campus is often more expensive than off-campus housing. So keep that in mind. Again, you will also need to keep track of food costs, books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses, and health insurance. So again, I'm going to repeat, these costs vary by institution across the US. Average room and board costs ranges between $11,000 to $13,000 per year. But again, it depends on which part of the US you are in. For example, the East and West Coast are more expensive than the middle of the country, such as Texas is cheaper than New York and California. So you should keep these in mind, as well as keep visa costs in mind as well. For F1 student visas, the fee remains at $185. So again, besides your tuition fees, there are a bunch of different costs that you should keep in mind. And then another cost to keep in mind is application costs that you will need to consider. So application cost, the average is between $30 to $90. There are also standardized testing costs as well. SAT fee is on average $110, and then $12 to $13 to send that score as well. So when it comes to the Common App, however, you can get a fee waiver, and if you want a fee waiver for your Common App, you can speak to your college counselors about it. The CSS profile that we will be discussing in detail today, that also has an application cost. So the initial application fee for the CSS profile is $25. Then you have additional reports that you can send. Those are for $16. So again, keep all of these costs in mind when you are thinking of applying. So I've spoken about all of these costs that all of you will need to consider and keep track of. So now let's talk about reducing these educational costs. So first off, when it comes to fee waivers, yes, Common App has a fee waiver, but the CSS profile does not have a fee waiver. And then let's talk about applying for scholarships and financial aid. So based on your grades and your profile, some schools, some colleges and universities award merit-based scholarships and financial aid. If you need to research scholarships, I recommend you go on the university that you want to apply to, go on their website, look at the different scholarships they're offering, and then apply not just to one, but you can also apply to more than one scholarships if you qualify for them. And then think about location, applying to institutions in areas that have a lower cost of living, such as in the South or the Midwest. Then you can also think about accelerating your program. So for example, I graduated in 3 years instead of 4, so I saved up on 1 year's worth of money. I did that because I got my A2 credits transferred, and then I took extra classes throughout my 3 years at college and was able to earn enough credits to graduate a year early. So you can also definitely do that if you're looking into saving money. Moreover, a lot of students think about looking at jobs, and as international students, you can work on campus. The limit is that you can only work 20 hours per week. And for example, I was given a specific budget by my parents, and I helped reduce educational costs by working 2 jobs on campus. I worked at the art museum as a visitor attendant at UMass, and I was also a residential assistant at UMass Residential Life Services. So there are some jobs that help reduce costs a lot. For example, my job, that was the residential assistant one, my room was paid by the university, so I had a free room. So you look into jobs like these that give you room waivers and certain kind of fee waivers. They're definitely there. You just need to go on the university's website and research them. And again, if you're having issues researching, we will help you every step of the way. And then another thing that helps when it comes to thinking about the location, for example, where I went, Amherst, it is a small town and the cost of living was cheaper there. So even though UMass is a public university, it's not that generous with financial aid and scholarship towards international students. But at the same time, because the cost of living within that town was really cheap, it was still affordable for me. And the other things I did, such as work on campus and graduate early. Anyway, let's go back to financial aid. So these are the 3 different types of financial aid. So number 1, something that I mentioned before, merit-based scholarships. So academic achievements and high test scores will help you qualify for merit-based scholarships. You can also qualify for different merit-based scholarships, such as those catered towards students who excel in art, music, or athletic abilities. Again, when you're thinking of going for these special talent scholarships, you need to, for example, if you want to go for an athletic scholarship, you will need to be a student who is an international or a national athlete, has won and is a champion of a variety of different competitions within your specific sport. So again, these tend to be more competitive. The academic achievements ones are also competitive, but more people tend to qualify for them. And then there's need-based financial aid as well. So when you're looking at need-based financial aid, this is where the CSS profile comes into play, as well as the FAFSA, if any of you qualify for that. So family income and financial need are important, and you may also consider certain merits. And then there's on-campus employment. When I talk about on-campus employment, I want all of you to keep in mind that yes, on-campus employment is definitely possible. However, at the same time, because you will be working on campus, because you will be limited to 20 hours per week, and a lot of you will be, most of the jobs available on college campuses are offer very basic pay. The pay is not a lot because again, you're all students. So the on-campus employment may not always, it rarely is enough to pay for your tuition fee. However, you can use the on-campus employment to help you with your day-to-day activities, day-to-day expenses, and just be extra pocket money. Let's move on. So there's need blind versus need aware. So need blind is when the student's ability to pay for their education, which is not part of the application and admissions process. So need blind universities are very competitive universities. Most of them are Ivies, however, not all of them, such as Amherst College. So if you get into such a competitive university, they will not take your financial situation into consideration, and they will try their absolute best to help and pay for your education. Need-aware universities, on the other hand, is when the university takes the student's ability and their family situation, and they will look at your CSS profile and they will take that into consideration and give you aid accordingly. So if you want to apply for the CSS profile, then and you're filling it out, look at universities that are need aware. However, you can also apply to need blind at the same time as well. So if you're applying for financial aid, consider the CSS profile and the FAFSA. Now I will be putting up a poll for you guys, so please answer it. So through this poll, I just want to know how many of you are applying for the CSS profile, how many of you are applying for the FAFSA, and did you know that you can apply for the CSS profile and the FAFSA at both at the same time? We did have a webinar that was solely dedicated to the FAFSA last week, and if you want to watch it, you can go on our YouTube channel. It will be uploaded in the next few weeks, so keep an eye out for that one. Okay, so some of the poll answers are coming in. A lot of you are interested in the FAFSA, I can see, and all of you want to apply for the CSS profile, which is great. So again, like I said before, today we will be focusing on the CSS profile. If you want to watch the webinar on FAFSA, go to our YouTube account. And if you have any questions, again, reach out to us, email us, and we'll help you with every step of the way. Let's move on now. So when we're talking about FAFSA and the CSS profile side by side, let's kind of compare both of them. So FAFSA is specifically catered towards US nationals, individuals who have the US passport, who have a social security number. And CSS profile, if you are a US national, you can apply for that. But at the same time, CSS profile is also filled out and is catered towards international students as well. One of the main differences between these two is that FAFSA is free. And for the CSS profile, you do have to pay money, which is $25 for one school, and then $60 per additional school. And then the FAFSA, the information that is required when it comes to the FAFSA and the CSS profile is it's very much similar. Both of them require almost the same kind of information, such as personal information about the student and the parents, your business income, your medical expenses, tax documents, etc. are both required. The two differences is when it comes to FAFSA and when you have to put in your parents' information, it gets a little bit complicated as you have to make your parents' account separately, you have to invite them, all of that. So that is one of the differences between them. And then when it comes to participating schools, you can check if they require the FAFSA or the CSS profile by going on the university's website. But the CSS profile is taken into consideration by most or almost all private schools. Public institutions or state schools do not consider the CSS profile. However, the FAFSA is taken into consideration by private universities as well as public universities as well. And then when you do fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile or both of them, you need to fill it out annually. For example, if you're starting school in fall 2025 and you fill out the CSS profile and FAFSA right now, keep a copy of it because you will be filling it out annually, meaning after every year. So before every fall semester, even after you're accepted into university, you will need to fill it out again so that you do receive aid. Moving on, let's talk about the CSS profile in detail. So starting off, what does the name CSS profile stand for? So CSS profile means college scholarship service profile. The CSS profile is a financial aid application used by many colleges, universities, and scholarship programs to award non-federal financial aid to students. So whereas FAFSA is federal financial aid, it's aid given by the government. That's why it's only for US nationals. The CSS profile is institutional aid. It's aid given by the university. So that is why the CSS profile requires details about assets, income, expenses, and even specific household circumstances. So the CSS profile, let's talk more into detail about this. The application is used by schools to determine financial need and consequently award financial aid to you. So that is why when you're filling out the CSS profile, please be as honest as possible. Do not over-exaggerate or under-exaggerate any of your expenses because you want to receive as much aid as you need. And that's how they, after looking at all the information that you've provided to them, that's how they will judge your eligibility for this financial aid. Again, reminder, you do need to give a $25 fee for sending the first report and then $16 for every subsequent report. The CSS profile is accepted and used by 400 schools and scholarship programs. When you pay, of course, you cannot pay with cash, you pay with your debit or credit card. And as soon as you make this payment, the application is sent to colleges. So why should you fill out the CSS profile? Again, it gives a comprehensive picture of your family's financial need to the university that you're applying to. This way, it'll be easier for you to afford university because you can receive the aid that you need. And it is a tool for families to inform financial aid officers about any special circumstances. So for example, if some students are facing issues because they have their parents are separated or divorced, or maybe their parents are going through a difficult time financially, you can explain that through the CSS profile. Your information will stay confidential and you can receive the financial need and aid that you need. So do you need to fill out the CSS profile? Check your college website for details on how to be a successful applicant. Go on the participating institutions list on the CSS homepage, do your research, make a college board account, select your schools, and report your parents. At the same time, when you are filling out the CSS profile, please make sure that you have your parents with you, you have all the documentation that you need. Again, because all of you are students, you might not know all the nitty-gritty details that are required, such as when it comes to tax documents or reporting your income or your parents' income. please make sure they're present and have a conversation with them beforehand. You will not be able to fill out the CSS profile overnight or in a day. It will take you significant amount of time. So just plan that accordingly, especially if you're applying early. So things to keep in mind before filling out the CSS profile is the CSS profile is already open. It opened up in October. Make sure you are double checking CSS profile submission deadlines. Different schools, especially if you're applying early, can have different deadlines for this. International students are not eligible for a fee waiver for the CSS profile, and you will have to report your expected family contribution. So what I mean by expected family contribution is that an estimate of an amount you and or your family can afford to contribute to you attending college. This is not a definitive number that the family is expected to pay, but rather a starting point to give the colleges an idea of how much you can afford. Your expected family contribution should be the maximum contribution possible towards your education or what your family is able to pay, not what they want to pay. So keep that in mind. And then some additional information is that if your parents are separated or divorced, each parent may have to fill out a separate CSS profile because this ensures confidentiality of each parent through separate applications. So again, please keep that in mind. If you have any questions, please email us. And this also allows institutions to determine the contribution for each parent individually because your parents are separated. So again, if you haven't made a CSS profile account, please make it. Go to cssprofile.org, select sign in to apply and log in with a College Board account. A lot of you will already have a College Board account because I'm assuming some of you have given your SAT or plan to give your SAT, so you should have a College Board account already. So what colleges are looking for through the CSS profile? They help you see a larger picture of the family's finances, understand the family's true financial need, and help award aid to students who truly need it, and distribute aid in an equitable manner as well. So just keep that in mind. And then required financial documents that you will need. So have all of these documents ready and checked by your parents to make sure you have the right one. So you will need your parents' tax documents. You will need last year's income tax returns. You will need the 114 forms and other records of money earned in the last 2 years, records of untaxed income and other benefits from the last 2 years, your current bank statements, current mortgage information, records of savings, stocks, bonds, trusts, and other investments. So this is why please speak to your parents, and you can also give your parents' email address. That's optional. But again, make sure you have that conversation with your parents, inform them of all this information so that you can fill out the CSS profile accurately and honestly, and make sure you fill it out right. So the main parts of the CSS profile include, so when you first log in, the first thing you will be required to fill out is your personal information, which is basic information such as your address, your full name. Again, when you're filling out the name part, please make sure your name is the same as your passport and your CNIC or any other documents that you have. Do not put a different name, that does cause issues. And then your basic information, you will also be required to talk about your household, how many people live there, if any of these individuals are in college, about, again, more basic information, how much your parents earned, etc. And they will ask you about your employment status and if you file taxes or not, because most of you are students and most of you might not have jobs, so that will be 0. And then academic information, all of your school information will come in. If you've been to multiple schools, please list those, etc. Then parents' information, again, very important. The personal information part will be similar to the parents' information part. So when you're filling it out, If a question asks about, again, marriage status or tax information or anything, make sure you read it carefully. You don't want to mix the parent information with your personal information. A lot of students make that mistake. Make sure your parents are there to help you when you're filling out the tax detail part. And then when it comes to household and expenses, your parents will know more details about this. They will ask you about your car, for example, how much you spend on groceries, stuff like this. So make sure you have all the information. And then again, like I mentioned before, student income and asset information will most likely be zero because a lot of you may not be earning because you're full-time students. So make sure you fill that out accurately. Here are some tips for filling out the CSS profile. So things you should do is you should plan ahead. Ask for help if you're not sure, if you're confused by what a certain word means, or in a certain section you don't know what to put in. Please email us. Check with your high school counselors as well. Check online. We're here to help you. Check your important details and multiple times. So before you submit the CSS profile, go do a run through of it, double check everything, double check the numbers, the figures, the amounts, maybe get it checked by your parents as well. And again, fill out the form with help, take screenshots, have all of your information saved separately so that when you need to fill it out later on, all of your information is with you. I know this is a lot of information, and then the CSS profile can seem a bit overwhelming. So don't get confused. Again, we're here to help you. Fill out and do not fill out a form incorrectly. Don't put the wrong academic year, wrong student status, etc. All of you will be starting college in 2025. Do not write 2024. So these are some things to keep in mind. Some of you guys can note this down or take a screenshot of this slide as well if it helps, but do keep these in mind. And then let's move on. So when you go on the CSS profile, this is kind of what it looks like. So it's designed to guide you through the application. Therefore, when you filled out a section completely and accurately, it will make it green. So this way you can keep track, okay, this is the section I filled out, it's green. The section that is incomplete will not be green then. Moreover, if a section is gray, like it is on the screen right now, that means it is not required at this time, so you don't need to fill it out. The blue start button allows you to enter that section, and if it's white like it is right now, that means it's incomplete and you can start it. So when you're filling in your information, please note that student information section may not have questions that do not apply to you. For example, if you're serving in the army, etc., or if you have dependents, CSS profile is also filled by US citizens. So a lot of this won't apply to you Pakistani students. So if you don't get too confused. If you don't understand anything, just ask us. And then for each school report, you will need your school year, you will need your student ID, which is assigned by your college, your housing plans, and admissions application status. So when it comes to housing plans, if any of you, again, if you're unsure if you want to live on or off campus, our recommendation would be when you're filling out the CSS profile, and if you haven't decided yet, then you should mention that you plan on living on campus so that you don't face any issues later on. And then this is the section where you will need your parents' details. For example, the part that says social security number, a lot of you might not be US citizens, so this won't apply to you. So again, don't get confused. This is how you'll have to fill in the details for one of your parents, month, date, year, date of birth that's required, their email address, their state of residence. Again, in Pakistan, we don't have states, so you will put in like a province. So if you're living in Karachi, it would be Sindh. If you're living in Lahore, it'll be Punjab, etc. And then highest level of education completed. Again, we're looking at your parents section. So highest level of education completed is asking your parents' education. So keep that in mind. And then financial contribution by parents and household members. This section is also important. The 114 form, make sure you have that and your parents are sitting with you while filling this out. This section in particular, you will not be able to fill it out yourself as a student, so make sure they're there to help you throughout. And then this is the future income section. So for example, if your parents, a lot of students say that my parents do not work a job, their income is based because they have a business. They don't know for sure what they will be getting in the next month or year. Therefore, you can put an estimate here, but it should be a very, like a good, accurate estimate and a guess that they're making. Again, looking at their current income and everything. So again, this section will be answered more accurately by your parents, so make sure they're there to help you through this. Then the employment and retirement section is here. So these are some questions that they can ask regarding your parents, such as what their retirement plan is, and if they have any funds available for retirement, etc. A lot of students who have mothers who are homemakers and housewives ask that what should they fill out in this section, especially when they ask about the employment status of their mother. So a lot of students might make the mistake of saying that their mother is unemployed. So when you put in that your mother is unemployed, even though she might be a housewife and she's never worked and she has no intention of working in the future, you might give the schools and institutions the view that, okay, maybe she's unemployed right now, but because she might be seeking work, so she might be employed later. So when it comes to your mothers who are unemployed by choice, there is a section right there you can see on the screen that says retired or not employed by choice. So if your mother is a homemaker, definitely choose this that says not employed by choice rather than saying unemployed. And then there's the retirement section. Again, your parents will fill this out with you. Employment status and which retirement plans do they participate in, etc. Your parents will help you through this section. So definitely ask them. And then there is your household summary. So when it comes to your household, report each person's name, date of birth, and their relationship to the applicant. You can add members. You can add as many members as there are in your household. A lot of students within Pakistan live in joint family households. So for example, their father, who might be the bread earner of the family, will be paying not just for the student, but for the entire family, their siblings, their mother, as well as the grandparents who might be living in the house, or maybe any other relatives. So you can and you should include those relatives within the CSS profile to give them a good view of what your family dynamic is like. So you need to add each member of your family in the household summary section until every person is reported. So make sure you do that. So again, like I mentioned before, who else is in the family? For each family member added, you will provide information about their school, their attendance, their full name, if they earn or not, all of them for each family member will be required. So when it comes to parent housing, this is also a section that is sometimes confused by students. If you have your own house, rent, live with others, housing provided by employer, you have to fill this out. So make sure you do that. A lot of students get confused when you have to kind of guess how much your house is worth, but at the same time, you should specify that your house is not an asset. It is somewhere where your parents live. It's part of their retirement plan, and that is not something that can be sold in order to pay for your education. So make sure you mention that in your CSS profile. And then these are some other examples of parent housing details. Homeowners report key information about their home. This is how you will do it. Moving on, Parent assets, again, something very important, which your parents will help you with. So report your current value of all your assets. So like I mentioned before, when it comes to the house, you can report the current value, but make sure you don't showcase it as an asset that can be sold to pay for your education. And report your current amount in your bank accounts, report any businesses, farms, or real estate properties. Answer questions about each business individually. Name the business which will be used to separate questions if there are multiple businesses reported. So if your parent has more than one business, you will report them separately. And then special circumstances. So when you're doing the special circumstances section, select all options that apply. For example, change in employment, COVID-19 pandemic, etc. So be specific, include all the amounts, include examples, be as specific as you can, as detailed as possible, and as honest as you possibly can as well. So, and then this is now it's your profile dashboard. So this will include your application status, your payment received, add colleges or programs. So let's talk about adding your colleges to the CSS profile. So a lot of students get confused when they're adding colleges. Make sure you know your college's name, the location, property, the state, for example, in order for you to search for it. If there is a code or number that you can put in to search your college, please make sure you know that. You can get it from the university website, or you can also look it up on your Common App. A lot of universities in the US have very similar names. For example, there are two different Harvards, one with a V, one with a W. Moreover, for example, state schools like UMass Amherst have different campuses. However, even though they have different campuses, you apply to these different campuses separately. For example, there's UMass Amherst and then there's UMass Boston. Again, both under UMass, but completely different institutions. So make sure you're very concise and you double check when you're adding your colleges, because you don't want to send your CSS profile and spend money on sending your CSS profile and end up sending it to the wrong school. So the next steps that you will be focusing on are any additional information on submitting documents. You will have to submit those documents through iDoc or by sending them directly to the colleges. So make sure you are in contact with your colleges. You can call them. Again, their number will be on their website, or you can even get their email through the Common App. So make sure you're doing that. So this is what your profile dashboard will look like when you are filling out the CSS profile. So moving on, I've mentioned a lot of things on how to fill out the CSS profile properly. So let's talk about some common mistakes that you can make. So applying for the wrong academic year, a very common mistake. Make sure you're applying for 2025, fall 2025. 2024 is ending soon. You will not be going for 2024. And then enter correct information in getting started, such as profile information. Make sure you have the right name. A lot of students misspell their name, or they put in the wrong name, which does cause a huge issue. Don't incorrectly answer student status questions. Don't select the wrong college or program. Again, be very specific. Do your research beforehand. And please submit the application on time, especially if you're applying early. So if you made a mistake, what you can do next is you can submit a correction. So you can only submit one application for free when you do make a mistake and you have to resubmit it with a correction. You cannot change data on the original application. So the original application that you've submitted will stay, and then you will submit an additional one, the first one being for free, with the correction that you have done or the data that you may have added. And then corrections will be available 1 day after the submission of the application. And then if you make another mistake and you want to do it again, then you will submit at a cost. So you may have to submit financial documents through iDoc to colleges. So make sure you know about this. And this does depend on the school and their requirements. So even again, double check with your schools and make sure you know all of the documents that your school requires so that you can send them in a timely manner. And then documents you may need to submit through iDoc. This includes federal income tax returns for custodial parents or non-tax filer statement. Then there's also the federal income tax returns for students or non-tax filer statement again. And then federal income tax returns for non-custodial parent if applicable. And then federal income tax returns for partnerships and or corporations if applicable. Again, if you're getting confused by any of these, do talk to your parents, talk to them about the documents that are needed, and do your research if or ask us and email us if anything seems confusing. So final tips before we start with Q&A, some of the final tips that I will tell you are plan ahead. The CSS profile is already opened. We are deep into the academic cycle. Right now, everyone is preparing for their early application. So make sure you're planning accordingly, you're doing your work accordingly, you're keeping track of your deadlines and your colleges and all the things and all the documents they need. Get in touch with your college counselor that is present in your high school or your college. Make sure you're speaking to them. They're a free resource present on your college, on your high school or college campus. Go talk to them. Do create a balanced college list that has dream schools, target, and safety schools accordingly. If you're confused by any of this, please email us. We'll help you. Make sure you have a budget set and that you know your budget. So again, through the budget, you can make a balanced college list. Involve your parents into this conversation. And do remember, you can apply for FAFSA and the CSS profile, both if you are a US citizen who is applying to private universities in the United States. Please discuss this plan with your parents. Keep a copy of the CSS profile because you will need it annually, even after you get into college. If you don't know something, ask and learn. So now we're going to be starting the Q&A. So please feel free to put in your questions in the Q&A box and I'll be getting to them. And these are some college search resources. You guys can take a screenshot of this or note these resources down. They're super helpful. And now let's start the Q&A. So in the Q&A, I am seeing some questions that are very specific to a certain student's profile. So if you have a very specific question, please email us and we will help you accordingly. Right now, I will be just answering general questions so everyone present in the webinar can gain this help. And at the same time, because a lot of students' information is private and they want to keep it confidential, if you have any specific questions, please email us. Someone asked that in the CSS profile, if you submit financial records that indicate the student can afford the fee, can the applicant still get some scholarship? So scholarships are different than financial aid that you get through the CSS profile. So if you do want a scholarship, you have to apply for them separately. That is, you will go to the university's website, you will look at the scholarships that they are offering. You will see which scholarship you qualify for, and then you will apply for that scholarship accordingly. You cannot apply or look at scholarships through the Common App, nor will the scholarships be you can't apply for scholarships through the CSS profile either. The CSS profile is institutional financial aid. So make sure you keep that in mind. So someone asked, if someone works 2 jobs on campus, can you increase the hours per week for that job? No, the 20 hours per week is very specific in the sense that even if most universities don't let you work or have more than 2 jobs, but even if you have 2 jobs, you do have to work within the 20-hour limit. And as an international student specifically, keep in mind you can only work on campus and you can't work more than 20 hours. And these jobs that are offered to students on campus aren't super because they know that students are full-time students. then these jobs will also be part-time jobs. None of these jobs will be full-time jobs, so they won't keep you super busy or you don't have to work overtime. There's simple jobs such as being a lab assistant or working as a receptionist or working in the library, etc. They're not super hectic jobs. So someone asked, what is the difference between FAFSA and the CSS profile? So let me just pull up that slide for you. I'll go back to that slide and discuss that a little bit more. So this is the difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile. The big difference is that CSS profile can be used by international students. FAFSA can only be used by US citizens. However, if you are a US citizen, you can use FAFSA and CSS profile both, but you can only use them both when you're applying to a private institution, a private university. If you're applying to a public school, you can only use the FAFSA, which is for, again, American citizens. CSS profile you can only use for private schools as an international and an American citizen. So if you're applying to a public or state university, you'll use FAFSA. If you're applying to a private university, you'll use CSS profile. If you're international, you'll use CSS profile and FAFSA if you're an American citizen. That is some of the things that confuse students. I hope that clears it up. Another thing is that the FAFSA is free. You don't have to, you can add schools on it and you don't have to pay a fee in order to have that report being sent to different schools. However, the CSS profile, it is $25 initially for one school and then $16 per additional school. So keep that in mind. Let's look at the questions. Someone said, I was told that the FAFSA is only for US nationals. Is this true? Yes, it is true. The FAFSA is only for US citizens. Someone asked, what is FAFSA? What does federal aid mean? So federal aid is the aid given by the US government, the US state. It is state aid. FAFSA includes grants, scholarships, and loans. Whereas the CSS profile is aid given by the institution. For example, if you apply to Mount Holyoke University, it is a private university in the US, and you submit your CSS profile to Mount Holyoke, then Mount Holyoke will be giving you financial aid. However, if you apply through the FAFSA to Mount Holyoke, again, you can do that. Mount Holyoke is a private institution. Then the US government, the state will be giving you aid. So that is the main difference. Someone asked, can I email to ask questions regarding the CSS? Can you please give us your email? Of course, I'll pull up that slide right now with our contact information. So this is our contact information. Please email us if you need. This is what our website is. And please email us at Karachi at educationusa.org. And then let's look at other questions. So someone asked that if I'm sending my CSS profile once, do I just pay 25 or do I have to pay 16 every time? So when you send your report once, you will have to pay $25, like I mentioned before, but then of course, a lot of you will send it to more than one school because you're applying on average, students usually apply to either 20 or 12 schools. So if those schools are private universities that you want to apply to aid for, you will have to spend an extra $16 every time you do submit that report to a different school. Someone said, if my mother does not file taxes because she is unemployed by choice, do I still have to mention her in the CSS profile? Yes, you will have to mention her because again, she is part of your profile. The university will want to see your mother's information. And on top of that, that means your father is paying for your mother. Your mother is kind of a dependent then. So you need to mention that because that will come into your household information on how many dependents are within your household and how many individuals are being supported by your father or whoever the main breadwinner is of your family. Someone asked, what if my parents are non-tax filers? If they are, please ask them to start filing taxes. Tax documents are important when it comes to the CSS profile. Someone said, can we write estimates instead of exact amounts? So within the CSS profile, in a lot of the sections, it is mentioned that if you don't know a specific amount, you can put in an estimate. For example, if your father owns a business rather than doing a job, he doesn't have a monthly set income coming in. It might, go up and down according to the business he has or the sales or the economy or whatever it is, then you can give an estimate if need be, but it needs to be a very accurate, like honest estimate. However, if your parent is working a job or if it's a tax documentation question, you will have to give the exact amount that is on your documents, your tax documents, or on your parents' documents. So again, this is why having your documents beforehand is really important when you're filling out the CSS profile. Someone asked, does CSS go with university applications or can it be sent later? Again, it depends on the university and what your university set deadline is for the CSS profile. So make sure you know which university which university you will be sending the CSS profile to and what their set deadline is, and work accordingly with that. Someone said that if I'm Pakistani and I don't have a social security number, what do I do? Again, you're Pakistani. A lot of these questions are set for US nationals. So if you are Pakistani and you don't have a social security number, you don't have to put that in, and they will understand that because you are not a US national, you're a Pakistani international student and in Pakistan, we do not have social security numbers. However, if they ask for any additional, for example, you will have to put in your passport number or any other different identity documents such as your CNIC or stuff like that. So make sure you have that. These identity numbers tend to be long, so make sure you're adding the right digits, you're putting the right number. You do not want to go into any problems later. Someone asked, what if my mother used to work previously but now has switched to being a homemaker? Then what would her employment status be? Again, with this question, it does depend on how long she has, but now if she has chosen to be unemployed by choice, then she will select that option. So someone asked, if we have a grandparent that is a financial supporter, then how will we file them in the CSS? Same way, like your grandparents, if they are financial supporter, you will mention that in the CSS profile. You will file them in a way that is similar to your parents. So when you're filling out the household information part, you can add household members. So you can add your grandparent then, and then also mention if they add to contributing to your household income and expenses, etc. So with the essence of time, because the webinar is about to end, please email us these questions. But before we end for today, I will recommend that all of you take a screenshot or note down the resources that I have listed. They're super helpful. And again, please email us or call us and register for our services. We are free advising and we're a great resource to have. But thank you so much for attending the webinar today. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for showing up.